A unified science flourished before the first word was ever written. Our ancestors possessed a sophisticated understanding of the cosmos, but they encoded this knowledge not in books, but in artifacts. This video reveals 20 of these ancient objects, each one a cryptic key to a forgotten world of discovery. By the end, you will see human history in a completely new light, uncovering a legacy of wisdom that predates civilization itself. How did a complex astronomical calculator exist over 2,000 years ago? What secret does a simple clay jar hold about the nature of electricity? The answers lie in these silent messages from our past. What does it mean for our future if our deepest scientific roots are far older than we ever imagined? The Antikythera Mechanism was not found in a library or a temple, but at the bottom of the sea. For over 2,000 years, it lay encrusted on a sunken Roman shipwreck, its secret hidden inside a lump of corroded bronze. When it was finally brought to the surface and studied, the world was stunned. This was not a simple statue or a piece of jewelry. It was a machine, a complex arrangement of interlocking bronze gears, some with teeth cut with such precision they could model the irregular motions of the moon. It was, in essence, an ancient analog computer. By turning a hand crank, one could see the positions of the planets, the phases of the moon, and even predict eclipses years in advance. This was a level of technical sophistication that historians believed was impossible for its time. How could such a device exist in a world without mass manufacturing, without the scientific method as we know it? The mechanism is a physical echo of a lost conversation, a shared understanding of the cosmos that was built into metal instead of written on parchment. It tells us that the desire to comprehend the heavens, to predict their patterns, was a powerful driving force for a science that was both advanced and utterly silent. This single artifact forces us to reconsider everything we thought we knew about the technological capabilities of the ancient world, suggesting a lineage of genius that was passed down not in books, but through the turning of gears. The Nebra Sky Disc was not found in a royal tomb or a sacred temple, but by treasure hunters in a German forest. This bronze disc, small enough to hold in your hands, is imprinted with the oldest known map of the sky. Gold symbols shimmer against its dark surface, capturing the sun, a crescent moon, and a cluster of 7 stars recognized as the Pleiades. Created around 1,600 years before the Common Era, it is a portable observatory, a physical model of the heavens used to mark the seasons and harmonize agricultural life with the cosmos. But it was far more than a simple farmer's almanac. Archaeologist Harold Meller describes it as a fusion of an extraordinary understanding of astronomy with an early form of religious cosmology. Here, science and spirituality were not separate paths of inquiry, but a single, unified way of seeing the world. The disc symbols were not unique to one village. They were standardized across a wide region, suggesting this was a shared language of the stars, part of a broader, coherent system of knowledge. How did early humans transmit such complex astronomical data across generations without a written word? The disc itself is the answer, a durable, visual code that could be taught, carried, and understood by many. Its very existence implies a collective intelligence, a network of shared observation that challenges our traditional timeline of scientific progress. If a society in the European Bronze Age possessed such a sophisticated, codified understanding of the sky, what other marvels, now lost to time, might have preceded it? Within the quiet halls of a museum in Baghdad rests a simple clay jar, no larger than a hand. It looks utterly ordinary, the kind of object you might pass without a second glance. Yet inside this unassuming vessel lies a mystery that has divided experts for decades. A copper cylinder sits within the jar, housing an iron rod, all sealed with an asphalt plug. When filled with an acidic liquid like vinegar or wine, this assembly does something remarkable. It produces a small but measurable electric current. Discovered in the region of ancient Mesopotamia and dating to around 200 years before the Common Era, this artifact is known as the Baghdad Battery. The theory, first proposed by German researcher Wilhelm Koenig, is that it functioned as a primitive galvanic cell. If true, this would mean that certain individuals in antiquity were not just aware of electrical phenomena, but were actively experimenting with its practical applications. What could such a device have been used for? Some suggest it could have provided a mild shock for therapeutic or ceremonial purposes, a tangible manifestation of an unseen natural force. Others propose it might have been used for electroplating, transferring a thin layer of gold or silver onto another metal surface, a process that requires a controlled electrical current. While its true purpose remains hotly debated, the experiments are undeniable. Replicas of the jar consistently generate around 1 volt of electricity. This is not enough to power a light, but it is enough to prove a principle. It shows that the fundamental components of a battery were within the grasp of ancient artisans. This single object forces us to ask a difficult question. Was this a one-off curiosity, a lucky accident of chemistry, or was it a faint echo of a more widespread, empirically driven science? The battery suggests a lineage of hands-on experimentation, a kind of knowledge that was built through trial and observation, and then passed down through practice rather than textbooks. It hints at a forgotten chapter in our relationship with energy, a chapter written not in words but in clay and copper. Deep within a burial site at Saqqara, Egypt, a small wooden falcon rested for millennia. Known as the Saqqara Bird, this delicate artifact was carved over 2,000 years ago and seems at first glance to be a simple child's toy or a ceremonial offering. But a closer look reveals something startling. Its wings are not flat or stylized like most bird sculptures. Instead, they are carefully shaped with a distinct curve, a cross-section that perfectly mirrors the airfoil of a modern airplane wing. This is not merely a representation of a bird in flight. It is a study of the principles that make flight possible. When researchers placed models of the Saqqara bird in wind tunnels, they confirmed what its shape suggested. The design generates significant lift, proving it is aerodynamically sound. It is a functional glider. How did an artisan in ancient Egypt arrive at such a sophisticated understanding of physics? Aviation historians suggest this was likely the result of intense observation and iterative experimentation. Someone was watching birds not just as living creatures, but as systems interacting with an invisible force. They saw how air flowed over a curved surface and then replicated that principle in wood. This was not magic, it was proto-engineering. The bird stands as a powerful symbol, a physical question carved from sycamore. Was it a blueprint for a larger craft, a teaching model, or a sacred object representing a knowledge of the skies that we never credited them with? It blurs the line between spiritual symbol and scientific prototype, forcing us to wonder how many other everyday objects from the ancient world are quietly holding the blueprints for lost technologies. What we dismiss as a simple artifact might just be a silent teacher waiting for us to learn its language. The mystery of the Saqqara bird invites us to consider other objects that seem impossibly out of place. In the mountains of California during the 1960s, a group of rock hunters cracked open what they believed was a simple geode. Inside, they did not find the expected crystalline cavity. Instead, they discovered a hard ceramic cylinder enclosing a metal shaft, all encased within the stone itself. This was the Coso Artifact, an object that bears a startling resemblance to a modern spark plug. Geological analysis of the encasing rock suggested an age that was difficult to comprehend, potentially hundreds of thousands of years old. If that dating were accurate, it would mean this electrical component was fossilized long before modern humans are even thought to have walked the Earth. The implications are staggering, pointing to a technological civilization in deep antiquity, a cycle of rise and fall so complete that only a single, baffling relic remains. Of course, the scientific community is deeply divided. Skeptics offer a more conventional explanation, proposing that the object is a champion spark plug from the 1920s that somehow became cemented inside a concretion of iron and clay, a natural process that can make a modern object appear ancient. Yet, even with this plausible theory, the enigma persists, forcing a profound question. How do we distinguish between a geological anomaly and a genuine historical paradox? The Coso Artifact, whether a modern misidentification or a relic of a lost age, serves as a powerful symbol. It represents the ultimate challenge to our linear timeline of progress. It asks us to hold space for the possibility that advanced knowledge is not a straight line, but perhaps a cycle, appearing and disappearing across vast stretches of time. This single, contested object pushes us to look for more concrete evidence, for patterns that repeat across different cultures and epochs, revealing a unity of scientific thought woven into the very fabric of the ancient world. In 1513, an Ottoman admiral named Piri Reis compiled a world map of such staggering accuracy that it defies simple explanation. His chart, drawn on gazelle skin, shows not just the familiar coasts of Europe and Africa, but also the coastline of a southern landmass that would not be officially discovered for another 300 years. This was Antarctica, but not as we know it today, buried under miles of ice. The map depicts the Queen Maud Land coastline with shocking precision, a geography that has been concealed by glacial sheets for thousands of years. How could a 16th century cartographer have known this? The admiral himself wrote notes in the margins, stating that he had compiled his work from many source maps, some of them dating back to the time of Alexander the Great. This suggests he was copying from far older documents, preserving a snapshot of the world from an era when Antarctica might have been free of its icy cap. The map's accuracy in longitude is particularly baffling, as accurately calculating longitude was a problem that would plague European sailors for centuries to come. Historian Charles Hapgood studied this anomaly extensively, proposing that the original source maps were the product of a sophisticated, global civilization capable of advanced spherical trigonometry and astronomy. This was not just map-making, it was a unified science that integrated celestial navigation with a profound understanding of the Earth's shape. The Piri Reis Map acts as a fragile, paper-thin time capsule. It is a direct copy of a copy, a whisper from an age of exploration so ancient that all its libraries and its explorers have turned to dust. It forces us to confront a monumental idea that a network of scientific knowledge once circled the globe, encoding its findings not in words but in lines and coordinates. If one map can preserve such a profound geographical truth, what other mathematical constants might be hidden in plain sight, waiting within the dimensions of a forgotten stone or the layout of an ancient city? 20,000 years ago, someone held the fibula bone of a baboon and began to carve. The result, known today as the Ishango Bone, is one of the most profound artifacts ever discovered. Found in Central Africa, this simple tool is covered in a series of meticulously grouped notches. At first glance, they seem random, but a pattern soon emerges. One column contains the prime numbers between 10 and 20. Another shows a system that appears to be duplicating numbers, a rudimentary form of multiplication. The groupings themselves suggest a base 10 counting system, a decimal foundation that would become the bedrock of modern mathematics, all etched into bone millennia before the pyramids were built. This was not idle scratching. It was a record, a calculator, and perhaps a calendar. The markings align with the phases of the moon, tracking time in a 6-month cycle. Here, in a single object, we see the birth of a unified science. Mathematics was not separate from astronomy, and both were woven directly into the fabric of survival, used for tracking lunar cycles, for hunting, or for managing resources in a complex social network. This bone shatters the long-held belief that such abstract concepts only emerged with the advent of agriculture and writing. It proves that the human mind was capable of sophisticated numerical and observational thought in an age we often dismiss as primitive. How was this knowledge preserved and taught across generations without a single written word? The bone itself is the curriculum. It is a tactile, durable teaching tool. Its notches a visual and physical language that could be passed from hand to hand. It reminds us that the deepest roots of science are not in grand libraries, but in the practical, brilliant innovations of everyday life. This connection between counting, the cosmos, and community would be encoded again and again, as we are about to see. The line between discovery and legend is often as thin as the carvings on a stone disc. From the high mountains of the Bayan Ha range in China comes one of archaeology's most enduring and controversial tales, the story of the Dropa Stones. According to accounts from the mid-20th century, a Chinese archaeologist named Kai Pu-te discovered a series of carefully arranged burial sites in a remote cave. Within these sites, alongside the remains of unusually small individuals, were hundreds of stone discs, each with a hole in its center and a fine, spiral groove running from the center to the rim. These discs, it was later claimed, were not merely decorative. When examined, the grooves were said to be not grooves at all, but a continuous line of tiny, unknown hieroglyphic writing. The story continues that when the script was finally decoded, it told an incredible narrative of a spacefaring people, the Dropa, whose ship crashed on Earth thousands of years ago, stranding them and forcing them to adapt to their new world. If true, these stones would be the ultimate artifact as record, a direct library of a lost history that challenges our very understanding of humanity's place in the cosmos. Yet, this is where the evidence fractures. No major museum houses a Dropa stone. No peer-reviewed study has ever authenticated the inscriptions or the translation. Mainstream archaeology widely regards the entire account as an elaborate hoax or a modern myth that captured the public imagination. So why include such a contentious story in a list of ancient artifacts? The Dropa stones, whether real or not, serve a crucial purpose. They highlight the powerful human impulse to find meaning in the unexplained, to use objects as vessels for our most profound questions. They represent the extreme edge of the search for a unified ancient science, a place where fact and folklore merge. This story asks us to consider how an artifact's power is not only in its physical truth, but in the possibility it represents. It encourages a mindset of open yet critical inquiry. What other objects have been dismissed as hoaxes only to be re-evaluated later with new technology? The journey now turns from these speculative frontiers to an object of undeniable and deeply rooted scientific genius found halfway across the world. A book that refuses to be read rests in a vault at Yale University. Bound in vellum, the Voynich Manuscript is a paradox from the 15th century, filled from edge to edge with a script that no one on Earth can understand. Its pages bloom with illustrations of plants that have never been identified by any botanist, their roots and leaves twisting in impossible configurations. Elsewhere, women bathe in interconnected pools of green liquid, and celestial charts map out unfamiliar constellations in intricate detail. For over a century, the world's top cryptographers, from wartime codebreakers to modern artificial intelligence, have tried to crack its cipher and failed utterly. The text is not random gibberish. Its structure follows complex linguistic rules, with a consistent grammar and word repetition that suggests a real, underlying language. This is not the work of a madman, but of a meticulous and intentional mind. The prevailing theory among many researchers is that this mysterious book is not an original creation, but a copy. It may be a faithful transcription of a much older work, a fragile papyrus or parchment that has long since turned to dust, preserving a snapshot of a lost scientific tradition. The unknown plants could represent a forgotten branch of herbal medicine, while the astrological diagrams might encode a unique understanding of the stars, a system of knowledge that was passed down through an oral or visual tradition long before it was ever committed to this cryptic codex. Its very existence is a testament to a world where profound knowledge was not for public libraries, but was often safeguarded, hidden away in objects meant only for initiated eyes. How many other coded artifacts sit in museum vaults, their secrets waiting for the right key? This journey now turns from the mysteries of encoded knowledge to the undeniable, physical genius of ancient engineering, where the proof of a unified science is written not in ink but in stone. A small, polished cube of stone from the ruins of Mohenjo-Daro holds a secret far greater than its size. This is not a piece of jewelry or a forgotten game piece. It is a weight meticulously carved to a precise standard, and it was part of a system. Across the vast expanse of the Indus Valley, from the great city of Harappa to the meticulous streets of Mohenjo-Daro, these stone cubes have been found, and they are all the same. Created around 2,500 years before the Common Era, this uniform system of weights reveals a civilization built on a foundation of shared science. They had developed a universal language of measurement, a system of metrology that allowed a merchant in one city to trade fairly with a merchant in another, hundreds of miles away, without ever needing to speak the same tongue. This was more than just convenience for commerce. It was the birth of economics, a shared conceptual framework for value and quantity that is the absolute bedrock of any complex society. How did they achieve such flawless standardization across such a wide region without a single written rulebook that we have ever found? The weights themselves were the law. They represent a collective agreement, a silent contract of trust and precision that enabled the flow of goods, ideas, and perhaps even early scientific principles. This simple stone cube is a testament to a unified practical science, proving that the tools of daily life, the scales and measures of the marketplace, were also the instruments of a vast, interconnected, and brilliantly organized world. This seamless blending of the practical and the profound finds an even more spectacular expression when we look to the heavens, where ancient cultures encoded celestial knowledge not in stone weights, but in breathtaking alignments of earth and stone. The Goseck Circle in Germany is a perfect alignment of earth and sky, built nearly 7,000 years ago. Before Stonehenge, before the pyramids, a community raised this ring of ditches and wooden palisades, marking the horizon with precise gates. On the winter solstice, the sun would rise and set directly in line with two of these southern openings, a spectacle of light that announced the year's shortest day and the sun's promised return. This was not a fortress or a village, but a colossal calendar, a solar observatory carved directly into the landscape. Its builders were Neolithic farmers who relied on an intimate knowledge of the seasons for their survival. By marking the solstices with such breathtaking accuracy, they integrated the grand cosmic cycles into the very rhythm of their agricultural and ceremonial lives. The circle's design is so sophisticated that researchers believe it was part of a larger network of similar sites scattered across ancient Europe, a coordinated effort to observe and record the heavens. How could such a complex understanding of astronomy be shared and standardized across a continent without a single written instruction? The monuments themselves were the communication. They were durable, communal textbooks written in soil and timber, their alignments a language that every participating culture could understand. This was a unified science of the sky, built not for kings or priests alone, but for the entire community, ensuring that vital knowledge would endure for generations. The impulse to encode cosmic order into architecture is a thread that spans the globe, connecting this German field to a much grander and even more mysterious structure on the other side of the world. Rows of ancient stones stretch for miles across the Breton landscape, a silent army of granite standing since 4,500 years before the Common Era. The Carnac Alignments are not a single monument, but a vast complex of thousands of individual megaliths arranged with breathtaking precision. While their scale is staggering, their purpose reveals an even deeper genius. These stones are not randomly placed. Specific alignments correspond with the rising and setting points of the sun and moon at key times of the year, effectively turning the entire coastline into a gigantic celestial calendar. But some researchers propose an even more sophisticated function. The unique geology of the area, situated on major fault lines, has led to the theory that the stones could also have served as a seismic predictor. The way sound waves or subtle vibrations travel through such orderly rows of stone might have provided early warnings of earth tremors, a hypothesis that, while difficult to prove, speaks to the potential depth of their environmental knowledge. This was not a project undertaken by a single ruler, but a communal endeavor that would have required generations of coordinated labor. What does this tell us about the society that built it? They were investing in a long-term future, creating a permanent scientific instrument for people they would never meet. The stones externalized complex knowledge, transforming the abstract movements of celestial bodies and the invisible shifts of the earth into a physical landscape that could be seen, walked, and understood. This was a science built into the world itself, a library of granite where every standing stone was a page in a book of cosmic and terrestrial Chinese letter. It proves that the most enduring records are not always written on parchment, but are sometimes carved into the very skin of the earth. This monumental expression of shared intelligence finds a fascinating counterpoint in the objects people carried with them, small personal items that connected the individual to the vastness of the cosmos. 17,000 years ago, deep within the caves of Lascaux, an artist's hand moved by firelight to trace the powerful form of a bull. But look closer at these magnificent paintings, and you will see more than animals. Scattered across the cavern walls are clusters of dots, precise geometric shapes, and mysterious symbols painted alongside the great beasts. For a long time, these markings were seen as purely decorative or ritualistic. Yet researchers like Dr. Michael Rappingluke have proposed a revolutionary idea. These dots are not random. They are a map of the night sky. Specific groupings above the shoulders of an aurochs, for instance, appear to mirror the exact arrangement of the Pleiades star cluster, while other patterns correspond to constellations we still recognize today. This was not merely art for art's sake. It was a sophisticated integration of astronomy and narrative, a way of weaving celestial knowledge into the stories that defined their world. The cave was their planetarium, the rock sealing their star chart. Here, science and culture were a single, unified practice. Knowledge of the seasonal migrations of animals was linked directly to the turning of the heavens. A painted bull was not just a symbol of the hunt, it was a signpost in the sky, a mnemonic device that helped an entire community remember when certain stars would appear and what their arrival meant for survival. This visual language ensured that complex information could be passed down through countless generations without a single written word. The paintings themselves were the enduring library. They remind us that the human drive to find patterns, to connect our stories to the cosmos, is one of our most ancient and profound instincts. The very materials these artists used have endured for millennia, a testament to an early mastery of chemistry and preservation that challenges our assumptions about prehistoric technology. The materials used by the Lascaux artists were a marvel of prehistoric chemistry, but this mastery of substances finds an even more stunning expression centuries later in a single, miraculous cup. In the soft light of a museum case, a Roman drinking vessel from the 4th century seems to hold a secret within its deep red glass. But tilt it, let the light pass through it from a different angle, and the cup undergoes a magical transformation, glowing with a vibrant emerald green. This is the Lycurgus Cup, and its secret is not magic, but a breathtakingly advanced form of nanotechnology. Roman artisans, through a process we are only now fully understanding, embedded billions of tiny particles of gold and silver into the glass. Each particle is smaller than a grain of salt, measuring just about 70 nanometers across. At this microscopic scale, the metal interacts with light in a unique way, a phenomenon known as dichroism. The artisans could not see these nanoparticles. They had no electron microscopes to confirm their work. Theirs was a science of the hands and the eyes, a knowledge built through generations of patient trial and error with materials. They learned that by adding precise, minuscule amounts of gold and silver dust to the molten glass, and then carefully heating and cooling it, they could achieve this miraculous color shift. This was not theoretical physics, it was alchemy in the truest sense, an applied science that blurred the line between laboratory experiment and sublime artistry. The cup stands as a testament to a hidden tradition of chemical innovation, a unified science where the quest for beauty drove a practical, hands-on understanding of the material world. How many other objects from the ancient world, objects we admire for their aesthetic value alone, are quietly demonstrating a lost science of materials? This seamless integration of knowledge and craft finds a profound parallel in the next area of discovery, where ancient ingenuity was applied not to art, but to the direct challenge of healing the human body. While the artistry of the Lycurgus Cup reveals a hidden science of materials, another ancient text demonstrates a remarkably clear-headed approach to the science of the human body. The Edwin Smith Papyrus is a scroll of profound medical insight, a detailed surgical treatise dating to around 1,600 years before the Common Era. What makes this document extraordinary is its tone. It is starkly rational, a world away from the magical incantations found in other Egyptian medical texts. The papyrus describes 48 cases of injuries from head wounds to spinal fractures with a methodical, step-by-step logic. For each case, it provides a clear examination, a diagnosis, and a practical treatment, categorizing outcomes simply as an ailment I will treat, an ailment I will contend with, or an ailment not to be treated. This is the earliest known example of a truly scientific method in medicine, based on direct observation and evidence, yet the language and knowledge within it are even older. Scholars agree this written version is a copy of a much older work, itself a transcription of a vast body of knowledge that had been developed and refined through oral tradition and hands-on apprenticeship for generations. This papyrus is a fragile bridge, a snapshot of a science that was practiced and perfected long before it was ever written down. It was knowledge passed from teacher to student, from healer to apprentice, through the direct act of setting a broken bone or suturing a wound. How many other foundational sciences began this way, as a living, breathing practice, only later being frozen into the written word? The systematic thinking preserved in this papyrus hints at a deeper, more universal language, one not of words but of numbers and ratios. This drive to find order and constant principles in the world would find its ultimate expression in the very stones the ancients left behind. The stones of the Great Pyramid of Giza speak a silent language of numbers. Its base perimeter, divided by its original height, yields a figure remarkably close to 2 times pi, the fundamental constant of a circle. The angles and proportions found throughout its design whisper of the golden ratio, a mathematical harmony seen in nature itself. Constructed around 2,500 years before the Common Era, this monument's precision extends beyond mathematics to a celestial alignment. Its 4 sides are oriented to the cardinal points with an accuracy of within 1/15th of a single degree, a feat of surveying that rivals modern engineering. How was such exact knowledge of true north and the Earth's geometry achieved in an age without satellites or laser theodolites? The pyramid is not merely a tomb, it is a 3-dimensional textbook. It suggests its architects saw no separation between the science of the heavens, the mathematics of form, and the art of construction. This was a unified knowledge system where religion, astronomy, and engineering converged into a single, monumental statement. The skills required were not invented in a single lifetime, but were likely the legacy of generations of master builders, a tradition of empirical observation and technical skill passed down through an unbroken chain of apprenticeship. This impulse to encode cosmic and mathematical truths into architecture is a global phenomenon. Far from the deserts of Egypt, another ancient culture was building its own precise observatory, not from stone blocks but from living earth itself. Deep in the river deltas of Costa Rica, the Diquis people left behind a legacy not in grand temples but in granite. Scattered across the landscape are hundreds of stone spheres, some as small as a hand, others towering over 2 meters tall and weighing more than 16 tons. They are not roughly hewn rocks, but objects of stunning geometric perfection. Their spherical accuracy is so precise that modern surveys reveal deviations of less than 2 centimeters across their entire surface, a feat that would challenge sculptors even with today's powered tools. How did a pre-Columbian society without metal tools or the wheel achieve such perfection in hard granite? The process was one of immense patience and profound understanding. Artisans likely identified naturally spherical boulders, then used a technique of controlled heating and cooling, repeatedly applying fire and then water to create fracture lines. They would then painstakingly peck and grind the stone with other, harder rocks, slowly refining the shape over generations. The sheer effort involved speaks to a purpose far beyond decoration. Many of these spheres were found arranged in precise lines and geometric patterns, often aligned with astronomical features or marking important pathways. This suggests they were part of a vast, open-air cosmological model, a physical representation of celestial bodies, or perhaps even fundamental units of a standardized measurement system. They are a 3-dimensional expression of a culture that valued mathematical ideals, a society that saw the perfect sphere not just as a shape, but as a symbol of cosmic order, uniting their understanding of the heavens with their organization of the earthly realm. Why did so many ancient cultures invest such immense, generational effort into creating objects of pure form? The answer may lie in their function as a kind of permanent, communal computer. These spheres externalized complex knowledge of geometry, astronomy, and social structure into a durable, unchangeable object that could be seen, touched, and understood by all, a silent teacher for a society without written words. This concept of an object as a vessel for calculation and memory finds a stunning parallel in a device that served as a personal computer carried in the palm of a hand. Across the Mediterranean, another disc carries a message no one can hear. The Phaistos Disc, a round tablet of baked clay discovered on the Greek island of Crete, is a singular object from the 2nd millennium before the Common Era. Its face is a spiral of mystery, stamped with 45 distinct symbols, from human heads and shields to bees and ships, all arranged in a sequence that coils inward from the edge. No other artifact like it has ever been found. This is what makes it so compelling and so frustrating for researchers. The symbols are not carved by hand. They are pressed into the clay using individual seals, making this the earliest known example of movable type printing in human history. This single fact transforms the disc from a one-off curiosity into something far more profound. It was not a unique document, but a duplicate. The very existence of these precision stamps implies a system, a standardized set of symbols that were used to create multiple copies of the same message. What was that message? The spiral pattern suggests it could be a calendar, tracking celestial cycles through the turning of the seasons. Others propose it was a hymn, a set of instructions for a ritual, or even an early form of computational notation for calculating something important to the community. Its purpose remains locked behind an unbreakable code, but the disc itself is the real key. It represents a society's attempt to freeze a complex idea into a durable, reproducible form. The stamps were a technology for distributing knowledge, ensuring that the same information could be understood in different places by different people, creating a shared understanding without relying on a single scribe's memory or skill. It was a proto-printing press, a tool for a unified science that was meant to be spread. How many other such teaching tools, how many other encoded discs, have crumbled back into the earth, leaving us with only this one tantalizing example of a system that was once much larger? This object stands at the very edge of what we call writing, challenging us to expand our definition of science to include any system that successfully preserves and transmits complex information across time. 3 small clay tablets were unearthed in Romania, each one etched with a series of curious, deeply carved symbols. Known as the Tartaria Tablets, these artifacts date to a staggering 5,300 years before the Common Era, a time when most of Europe was still in the deep Neolithic age. They do not look like much at first, just fragments of baked earth, but the markings upon them are what ignite the imagination. There are animals, abstract shapes, and what appear to be linear scripts, all arranged in a deliberate order. For decades, archaeologists have debated their meaning. Are these the earliest form of writing in the world, predating even Sumerian cuneiform by over 1,000 years? Or are they a sophisticated symbolic system, a code for recording ceremonial rituals or tracking the cycles of the moon? The line between a sacred symbol and a phonetic letter is razor thin, and these tablets sit directly on that edge. If they are a true script, then the entire timeline of human literacy must be rewritten. This would mean that the impulse to encode language into permanent symbols did not emerge from the great river valley civilizations, but from the heart of old Europe, evolving alongside the very dawn of settled farming. The tablets suggest that the need to record, to systematize, and to transmit complex information was a driving force of civilization itself. It forces a profound reversal of our traditional thinking. Perhaps writing did not give birth to complex science. Perhaps it was the other way around, a pre-existing, unified understanding of the world, a science of the stars and the seasons and the community, created such a pressure to record its findings that it spontaneously gave birth to the technology of writing. The Tartaria Tablets are a quiet, clay-bound argument that the human mind was reaching for abstraction and permanence far earlier than we ever believed. They are the ultimate fusion of artifact and document, a physical object that is also a potential sentence from a lost language. This brings our journey through 20 ancient artifacts to a final, profound question. If the very first scratches on clay were born from a deep, pre-existing science, what does that tell us about the fundamental nature of human discovery? Our final artifact brings this idea full circle, pointing not to a single object, but to a pattern woven into the fabric of the ancient world itself. The final artifact is not made of stone, bronze, or clay, but of melody and memory. Across Australia, Aboriginal songlines trace the contours of the land itself through a vast, interconnected web of stories and songs. An elder walking a desert path does not just see sand and rock. They hear the verses sung for millennia that name every waterhole, every distinctive mountain, and every significant plant. This is a living, breathing map, but it is also a scientific repository. The songs encode precise navigational routes, detailed ecological knowledge of animal behavior and food sources, and a profound astronomy that tracks celestial bodies for timekeeping and seasonal change. This knowledge system, passed orally for over 60,000 years, represents perhaps the most enduring and holistic artifact of them all. Here, science is not a separate discipline. It is woven into the very fabric of culture, spirituality, and law. The songlines challenge the modern idea that knowledge must be written to be valid or complex. Instead, they present a model of unified understanding where the landscape, the cosmos, and human society are a single, interconnected story. The artifact is not an object to be held in a museum, but a performance to be lived and renewed with each generation. It reminds us that the most resilient containers for information are not libraries but people. As we reflect on these 20 artifacts, from the gears of the Antikythera Mechanism to the walking songs of the Australian desert, a common thread emerges. It is the thread of a unified science, a way of seeing the world where astronomy, mathematics, engineering, and storytelling were not separate fields, but different expressions of the same fundamental drive to comprehend our place in the universe. This knowledge was built through observation, tested through practice, and encoded into the most durable mediums available, from carved bone and monumental stone to the human voice itself. This recurring pattern across continents and millennia points to a single, profound reality. A unified scientific impulse has been a constant companion to humanity, a shared drive to comprehend the cosmos through careful observation, hands-on experimentation, and the creation of durable symbols. Whether it was an artisan carving a bird's wing to understand lift or a community raising stones to track the solstice, the process was the same. They looked at the world, they tested their ideas in physical form, and they encoded their findings into objects meant to last. This was not a primitive science, it was a holistic one, where the movements of the planets were inseparable from the mathematics of a pyramid and the spiritual meaning of a songline. These artifacts were not just tools, they were the original databases, cross-generational hard drives storing the collective intelligence of their cultures in stone, metal, and memory. This hidden legacy forces a fundamental question about our modern narrative of progress. We often envision history as a straight line, a steady climb from ignorance to enlightenment. But what if the story is not one of linear ascent, but of cycles of discovery and forgetting? What if we are not the first to grasp certain truths about our universe, but are instead engaged in a great, slow-motion act of rediscovery? The precision of the Antikythera Mechanism and the mathematical constants woven into the Great Pyramid suggest that profound peaks of understanding were reached, lost to time, and then patiently rebuilt. This perspective does not diminish our modern achievements, but it humbles them, placing them within a much broader and more mysterious human journey. It suggests that ancient wisdom is not a collection of superstitions to be outgrown, but a different language for expressing timeless truths about nature, number, and our place within it all. The real lesson of these 20 artifacts may be that the deepest forms of knowledge are not owned by any one era, but are a common inheritance, waiting patiently in the earth and in song for us to learn how to listen again. This journey through 20 artifacts reveals a puzzle not of isolated curiosities, but of a connected intelligence. These stones and gears and songs are not random fragments. They are the scattered pages of a single, vast library built by humanity long before the first word was written. They remind us that true knowledge is not confined to parchment, but lives in the objects we craft with care, the stories we tell with purpose, and the celestial patterns we observe with wonder. This legacy invites us to look anew at the artifacts of our own time, the devices and structures that define our era. What silent messages are we encoding for generations yet to come? What story will our creations tell about our own understanding of the universe? Share your reflections in the comments and subscribe to continue unraveling the great mysteries of our shared past. For the greatest discoveries often lie not in what is loudly proclaimed, but in what is quietly preserved, waiting patiently for a future ready to listen.